The PlainID Simulator is an external tool used for demonstrating the authorization platform's abilities. This tool utilizes the runtime endpoints of asset resolution and policy resolution to calculate and visualize the response based on the input parameters and the policies connected to the scope defined. When we first start using the PlainID simulator, we will need to define the PDP mandatory params. These are the base URL, which is the URL of the runtime that will be used by the simulator, and the client ID and client secret of the scope we will use in the requests to the simulator. Let's add these parameters. So for the base URL, I'm going to be using the following example. And I will also add the client ID and client secret of my scope. Once we click on Save, the simulator is ready to be used. The response type defines the type of request to be simulated. Asset resolution is an open-ended question for a specific user, returning the list of allowed assets and their associated actions for a specific application. Policy resolution returns the logical filtering of data and the list of allowed data items for the user. The JOT field is used to pass a JOT generated by an IDP, allowing us to get additional identity information from JOT. The UID is the unique identifier of the identity, and it is required to generate a simulator call. Under Advanced, we have additional parameters we can use for the request. The context data field is used to pass identity context data for this request. Identity attributes can be added to the request to support either dynamic group calculation or identity attribute-based conditions. Environmental data is used to pass information required for the request.asset rules and request conditions. The time zone and the date and time are used to define the timestamp passed as part of the request to calculate time-based conditions. And lastly, the IP field is used to pass in the request the IP that will be used for the calculation of IP conditions. Let's simulate an asset resolution request. First, I will select the response type, asset resolution, and then I'm going to go ahead and add all the parameters that I need to calculate this request. For this request, I have defined our UID as well as two identity attributes, the title and branch, which will be used for the calculation. Now I'm going to run the report, and we have the following view. Under Identity Info, I can see the two attributes that I have passed, and then we can go to the Asset view and see what is permitted to this user. We have two assets. Both are under the London branch, and our policy behind the scenes is going to be matching the asset and identity information. So if we change the branch, for example, we will see this reflected in the response as well. We can also click on Policy List, right? And for this specific user, we see that we have one single action permitted, and that is view, right? We can go ahead and change the branch to simulate what is going to happen if the information on the identity is going to change. We're going to run the report. And then we see that the assets changed. We now are getting assets that are based in the New York branch, right? Similarly, we can go ahead and change the title. Run the report again. And now we see that we have two actions that are added for the same assets based on the title of this user. And if we go to the policy list, we can see that we have another policy that was calculated for this user based on the identity attributes passed. We can also click on Request to see the request that was sent to the PDP, and also see the response that was received. Now let's go ahead and simulate a policy resolution call. When sending a policy resolution request, we also can specify the fully qualified table name. This will allow us to present the modified SQL query that will be supplied to the calling application. I will go ahead and add my table over here now. Let's go ahead and run this call. And we can still see under the identity information, same information as we passed before. And we can also see the query. So the original query that is simulated to be sent to the application is select all from the specific table, which we have specified here. The modified query that was calculated based on the policies in place is presented here. So instead of getting all the columns of the specific table, we are getting some of the columns with a filtering, with a row level filtering on the table itself. So we're getting the column level filtering and the row level filtering as well. We can go and see the policies list that are used for this calculation. And we can also hit on Request to see the resolution request that was sent and the response that was received.